It's more than just your output, more than a bike. When you hear your shout out, you know it's all right. Put on your magic pants and let's go. We're cruising into the power zone. Clip in, set yourself free. Come on and take a ride with me. Know what you need to know and what's it all about. Everything you need, it's on the Clip Out.
Welcome to the Clip Out Podcast, episode 314. This is Crystal O'Keefe.
And this is Tom O'Keefe. We are back.
We are.
From the wonderful world of mouse. So for Krabby, that's why. This time last week, we were in the middle of a wonderful vacation.
Yeah.
And now we're playing catch up from all the resting. Because we all know Disney World is so restful.
Yeah. Tom, I don't want to do a whirlwind vacation again for a while. Like, next vacation, we need to relax.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we already have the next one lined up, and it is relaxing.
Oh, good.
So, there you go.
Excellent.
You and your first world problems.
I know, right? Wham.
Yes. So, but we did have our meetup that we were telling everybody else, so we want to say thank you to everyone who came out and said hi.
Yeah, we had so much fun meeting everybody.
And I had chicken tenders.
You sure did. And Andrea Dennis Fulcher, like, practically fell out of her chair when you did. She was so excited.
I think it's like on the Carol Burnett show when they used to always ask her to do the Tarzan yell.
Yeah.
That's my Tarzan yell. You were like, can Tom eat a chicken tender for us?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the answer is yes.
Yes,
always,
I can.
always yes. Yeah.
Well, especially when I'm in Disney World, not doing MetPro, taking the week off and enjoying all the Disney food. So
and enjoy it, we did.
We did. Maybe
and then some.
A little too much, but yeah. So we'll have to figure out where our next big giant trip is that we can do something like that for.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
So much fun. I really appreciate all the people that came out. We had people driving in from all over, and I can't tell you how much that means to us that you did that for us, for the community, for Peloton. Like, that's what Peloton's all about.
Especially, like, I know getting to Disney is not easy. Right? Like, it's like that can be a process. I know we were not in a park proper. We were at Disney Springs, but that's still, it's not like, it's just like, oh, we're at this little restaurant in San Jose. Like last time, it's like, brave the world of Disney. Like,
right.
that's a whole different level of gauntlet in which to thread yourself. So
that it is.
So what, pray tell, do you have in store for people this week?
Well, we are going to break down all the details of Peloton On Tour.
Okay.
The first event has been submitted, released, whatever you want to call it. Plus, we have just a whole bunch of details about just all the things going on with Peloton. Peloton is showing up in the news a lot again. I think this is a very, very good thing. I think it says that, well, one, they never stop being relevant, but
right.
Two, I think that the communications team is working hard to get positive news out about Peloton, and thank God.
And you're starting to see the fruits of that labor. There's always a lag time between the push and then the end result.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Also, we here at the Clip Out, we've got a whole team of people reviewing all of the programs. So we've got some thoughts on all of that as well. And not to mention, there is some outside reviews that we will hit as well. There's a lawsuit update because when isn't there?
For sure.
We get a visit from Dr. Jenn talking about prioritizing sleep. And we have a visit from Angelo at MetPro. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting, pros and cons. Not to mention celebrities, artist series, connected fitness, and of course, in case you missed it.
Awesome. Well, before we get to all that shameless plugs, don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you find a podcast, you can find us while you're there. Be sure and follow us so you never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. Always super helpful. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Clip Out. While you're there, like the page, join the group. Sorry, I was like, which show am I recording?
What show am I recording?
Yeah. You can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/ the clip out.
Just hit a new episode.
Yeah, we just dropped a new episode. We go more in depth about all the things we did at Disney, about the minor kerfluffle that almost completely derailed Real Spoilers, my podcast that's been around for 10 years and was almost had someone stole our name.
Yeah.
And we had to...
and change the face of the clip out forever.
Yeah. So we tell that story as well, if you're wondering what was all going on there when I was looking for a trademark attorney. So you can also, where was I at? Find us on YouTube, youtube.com/theclipout, where you can watch these episodes. Also, thanks to everyone who's shared an episode, shared an article, stories when we break them. That always helps get the word out about us, and we greatly appreciate it. Finally, we have a newsletter. It did not go out last week because I was in Disney World. But it will go out this week, I promise. And you can sign up for that at theclipout.com, and you get all the links and things like that. So there's all that. Let's dig in, shall we?
Let's.
What's that?
We shall.
There we go.
Oof.
Oh, goodness.
Sorry.
What are we going to do with you?
I know.
Peloton in the news.
Peloton On Tour has announced their first city, and it's Los Angeles, and we have more details about what to expect with events and which instructors you will be able to see there.
Yeah, so there's a few things that we need to make sure that you know about this. One, it's taking place July 13th through 15th. Now, the tickets went on sale noon, June 13th, and they were completely sold out noon, June 13th. It took seconds to sell out. Seconds. There were
This is the second biggest city in America.
It is,
Yeah.
but I think more than that, we had some conversation with Peloton and the communications team, and they did explain, hey, Santa Monica is the smallest store in the tour.
Okay.
I rhymed.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's really limited space. Like, it's taking place outside, and it's still super limited.
Right.
So I think that you can expect the amount of tickets to vary per city based on what Peloton is telling us, but especially for this one, super tiny.
Gotcha.
So there is no 3-day pass for any of these events, like whether it be Los Angeles or a different city. You have to buy tickets separately for each event. So that way you get like a teeny tiny part of it,
right?
Even if you can't have the whole thing. Some people, were having a lot of reactions to that. But
I think that ultimately that's going to spread the love, though, right? Because if you could get a 3-day pass, people would just go and be like, "Yeah, I'll get the 3-day pass, and if I can't go to something, whatever."
No. Yeah. I agree with that. But the thing is if you're traveling, because it's only 5 cities, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of people that have to travel, and then you travel for a freaking hour.
Here's my thought on that. I don't think they want you to travel.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they want
don't.
this to be a local thing, and they don't want, in an hour, I wouldn't consider traveling to come to an event like this. You don't need a hotel room or a flight or something like that.
No,
but,
I was saying people traveling 5 hours for an hour's worth of time.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And I don't think they want you to. I think that's why you have these narrow windows between when it's announced and when it happens. And I think that they do not want this to turn into Homecoming 2.0. They want it to be very run and gun, and you don't have an opportunity to make big plans.
Yeah, I think people need to pivot their thinking. Like, Homecoming was all about us all coming together. This is about them putting on a show for you,
right,
and you paying for that show. It's different. And I don't even mean that as a criticism.
Right.
I'm just saying that's kind of the world that we're in right now. Like, there's all kinds of podcasts that go on the road, and they charge people for events, for example.
Right.
That's really more of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
You're paying to do a meet and greet with the instructors, or you're paying to do film a class with the instructor. You're not like just hanging out with them. And it used to be you were hanging out with them,
yeah,
and taking a class. And so it's just different. However, the instructors are going to also be different for each city. And so for LA, you're going to have Adrian Williams, Ben Aldis, Camilla Ramon, Katie Wong, and Kendall Toole. Lots of people are question marking, why isn't Dennis going to be there? Because he's so into California. I think he's more into Florida than California.
And maybe it just doesn't fit his schedule. You don't know what's going on in his life.
Well, not only do you not know what's going in his life, you don't know what, like, they had to put somebody in there from Europe, right? Like, each of these cities, they have to bring somebody over here. And then vice versa. At least an instructor from the U.S. is going to go over to Europe. So this is going to be different for each one. Also, just because there's 5 in LA does not mean there will only be 5 for other cities. We don't know.
Right.
We just don't know. So again, there's all these different events. You have the instructor experience, which is basically a meet and greet. Then you have the walk and talk, where you hang out and walk with the instructors. And then you have the high five crew. Out of all of these, I am most annoyed by the high five crew.
Why is that?
Because you stand outside with a sign.
Okay, that's
like
what that
you're
is.
at the Today Show.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Now, from a let's involve as many people as possible, I'm cool with that.
Right.
I am. I like the fact that they're trying to bring as many people into it as possible. But I don't know. Standing there with a sign for a chance to see an instructor.
It seems I get it. But I guess on the flip side, there are people who would do that. Like, if they didn't...
That's fair.
If they didn't make this a thing, there would be people doing that anyway.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do it, don't do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is they're going to have attendee exclusive online apparel warehouse sale. They've never done this before. In the past, whenever it was in person, they had an apparel sale you could only access because you were in person.
Right.
Since it went virtual, or, some kind of combination thereof, they just had an online sale. It was available to everybody. But no more. Now it's going to be, if you are a person who is attending, then you get one single-use discount code that's going to be emailed to you on Monday, July 10th, and it is for 50% off. It will only be good for July 17th through Wednesday, July 19th, and exclusions may apply because, got to add that star on there.
For sure.
To your point, Tom, that they only want people from the city, the leaderboard awards. Mm-hmm. Why else would you keep it only for the LA area?
For sure.
Why?
Well, also, if you're going to, but I guess if the plan is to do this at each stop, it almost has to be local, because you would give the award to the same people at every stop then, right?
But again, if you are traveling, you couldn't nominate people. It has to be somebody who lives in the LA metro area.
Right.
Well, that's very limiting.
Yeah.
And so, this all makes sense to me if, and it's a big if, next year, if they do this, we have different cities. Or if it's not next year and they do this every few months or something like that.
Right.
But there's just things we don't know. And they may not know, because they might be like, how well is this going to go over?
Yeah.
What things do we need to change?
So as they're lessening the number of stores, it makes me wonder if, like, at some point they're going to run out of stores with the way that they're doing this. And so then my question becomes, does this end up happening at a Dick's? Or do they start doing pop-up locations where they rent a facility somewhere, they rent an empty storefront in the mall, like Spirit Halloween, and try to replicate it in other cities that don't have Peloton stores?
Well, and that's a great point too, because like for example, there isn't a showroom in St. Louis anymore. I don't know if there's one in Kansas City, but that would literally be the only place. So like, you might as well take the entire state of Missouri off of that. And we're not alone. There's a lot of states like that.
Right.
So like, if you're going to vary it, how are you going to address that? Also, there's a lot of people that haven't read this very well, and they're just assuming that like Peloton is like renting a room and you get to ride a bike with your instructor. It's not what's happening here. And I think people who listen to the show already know that, because we are the ones that pay attention.
Right.
Like, the people who are listening care enough about Peloton. They're reading every little detail that comes out.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that don't get that, and they're super confused. So it will be interesting to see what the future brings. I mean, Peloton has always been very focused on data and very focused on feedback. So when they get the feedback from this event, it will be very interesting to see what changes from event to event. We know that each event is going to be slightly different anyway, but in what way will this evolve over time? Will we have those pop-ups? Will we have them renting space? Will they bring in different instructors to different cities? There's just so many questions that we don't know the answer to. And I think part of it is they're holding it close to their vest. I also think part of it is they don't know.
Yeah, I think there is an element of like, we're going to make some adjustments on the fly in the same way that they do with everything, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how they changed the app, but they've always made adjustments on the fly, right? It used to be Beyond the Ride, and then so that's part and parcel of what they do.
It's like Disney World. They're always adding on.
Right.
It's never the same experience twice.
Will never be done building it. Right. So it will be interesting to see how the next city plays out and if there are any differences.
It will. Yeah. And stay tuned because we will keep you completely up to date with all of that as it occurs.
Because that's what we do.
And I just want to point out, we do have a listener who is going to be attending. They did get their ticket. They are shocked they got a ticket. And we will be having full coverage of the event that weekend.
Awesome. Boots on the ground.
Yep.
This week, Peloton was having some streaming issues.
Boy, they sure were.
Some performance issues.
This occurred while we were in Disney, and I was hearing all about it from Darcy and Nikki and Tina. So yeah, they had things happening. This had been going on for days in the OPP. People had been saying, like, I have no internet connection. Like, my internet connection is fine, rather. But Peloton says I don't have an internet connection. Nothing is working. It's just buffering, cycling. And so, of course, they posted about it on the OPP. Of course.
Or not cycling.
Yeah. And of course, everybody in the OPP was like, you're stupid and don't know how to use the internet. And then finally Peloton was like,
actual audio of that conversation.
It was, yeah. And then Peloton was like, oh yeah, this is an issue, by the way. So they posted that on Wednesday, June 7th, and then then on June 8th they were like, well, we're good now. On the 9th, I'm sorry. Yeah. They were like, oh, we're good now. And some people are still saying they have issues, but overall, the complaints have died down considerably. So whatever they did improve it. So
I think from what I heard, they just they turned Peloton off and turned it back on again.
They just reset it.
Yeah, they just turned the whole thing off and back on.
Well, I know you're joking, but the second thing that got added right after this got added was that some members couldn't log into their accounts. So I kind of think that you're actually right, that they did some resetting of servers, and that's why people were not recognized. Because when I got home, and like this morning, I turned on my tread for the first time since I've been here, and it was like, who are you? And I was like, you know who I am. And I had to like log in all over again. So I think that whatever they did reset everything. Yeah. Well, me and the tread had words.
Glad it's working. MarketBeat had an interesting article. So it started off as a negative. As Peloton shares fall over 90%, a comeback strategy surges. So they actually have a positive take on what's going on. They seem to think that Peloton is turning a corner and that their efforts are starting to pay off and that there's daylight.
They must be listening to the podcast. I mean,
clearly.
I've been saying this. But, it is happening.
Yeah.
People want to shit all over it still, because it's I don't know that we'll ever be back to $171.
Well, no, I don't think that. I think that was a fluke thing, and congrats to the people that got out when they did. But yeah, but it says here that that there's been significant progress in pivoting revenue mixes has brought Peloton close to positive free cash flow, which they've been saying for a while, a milestone that could likely stop share dilutions and even bump analyst ratings. So
I think those are all good points. I'm glad people are starting to see it. I'm glad the financial sector is starting to see it.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of financial sector, here's one that's kind of not seeing it. Inc.com, I-N-C, not I-N-K, has an article about Peloton told customers to stop using their bikes. Then it told them they had to keep paying for their subscriptions. And it's like, but you can pause your subscription.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If you're going to use it for other things, then yes, you need to keep your subscription.
Yeah.
It's called obvious. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah. And then it does have one line like, well, I mean, yeah, you can pause it, but what if you use it for other things? Then you're using it.
Then you're using it.
Yeah. Then that's called using it. I mean,
first of all, let's recap the actual facts here. We know that the company recalled 2 million bikes but we also know they didn't actually recall the bikes. They recalled the seat post. Okay. They also said, hey, people who are over 250 pounds and over 5'11" are actually the ones who we need to really be focused on. And everybody can get a new seat post that has the original bike. That's fine.
But we're prioritizing.
But if you're not in that demographic, what are you even worried about?
Right.
It's 13 issues. 13 injuries, 35 reports.
Yeah.
Out of 2 million bikes. Years old.
Right.
So no, you don't need it. You don't need to have more money given to you for doing nothing. Stop it. Put your hand down. That's my 2 cents.
Psychology Today has an interesting article. It's not Peloton specific, although the author Art Markman, PhD, does say that he has a Peloton and is affected by this, but it just kind of talks about how a broken streak will sap someone's motivation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this with Dr. Jenn all the time.
For sure, the importance of the blue check mark.
I mean, she will do whatever she has to do to get that blue dot. It is super, super important to her. And I feel like a lot of people are like that. I will not lose my weekly streak. I'm fine with missing a day because I do other things, not just Peloton.
Yeah.
But a week? Oh, no. I am on 232 weeks or something like that.
I just hit my 2-year streak on Tonal.
Very impressive. Which would be 3 years.
Would be a 3-year streak, except when we went to Disney 2 years ago, I missed it because at the time I didn't have the app, and I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, oh man, I'd be at 3, but it's fine.
But it is motivating, and I totally agree with this guy. I totally think this is true, and it's not the end of the world, right? It's so subjective.
Yeah.
But if it keeps you going, who cares? If it makes you want to do more things.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So there's a study they did. It said in one study, participants were given an exercise app designed along the lines of many popular fitness apps. Participants did a series of 3 bodyweight strength exercises and got a check mark on a streak for each one. Right? After doing a 4th strength exercise, some participants received a 4th check mark. Yay. While others were told there was a temporary glitch in the system and their exercise was not logged, so they received an X rather than a check mark, indicating broken streak.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, Crystal's breaking into a cold sweat just hearing this.
Dr. Jenn would fall down.
All participants were then given a chance to do another strength exercise or to shift to a stretching exercise. About 66% of participants chose to do another strength exercise when their streak remained intact, but only 58% did another strength exercise when the streak was broken.
This makes perfect sense to me.
Totally.
Yeah. You feel so bummed. Whatever.
Yeah. And they said this isn't a one-off, that they've done other similar studies and that they've replicated this multiple times, because you do have to be cautious about these big headlines and articles like this when it's based on one story with 3 data points, but they're saying that they have replicated this. So anyway, just thought that was interesting and we would share.
Absolutely.
We have a couple new reviews on the website for our programs. You alluded to this in the opening of the show. The first is from Helper B. Nikki Smith. She says, I tried Anna Greenberg's new self-care retreat program, and I think you should try it too. So she was a fan. Yeah,
she absolutely loved it. And when she talks about her long military directed move, oh my God. I feel this so much because she's told me so many details about this. I'm stressed just hearing about her move. So yes, she needs this self-care retreat, and she has genuinely loved it. She's also been separated from her Peloton just this week, and so it's really coincided nicely with that because it's given her an ability to direct that motivation
and keep her blue check mark
and keep her streak. Yeah. So there's a lot of things coming together here. But I thought that it was really interesting. She noted that this class, one of the classes in here, does feature inversions, handstand hops.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. But, just like with everything with Peloton, they tell you, hey, if this isn't for you, that is okay. You don't need to do it. But it's nice that they do have some ability to kind of challenge those users who are more advanced in their yoga using ways.
I like Anna reached full handstand and I reached for my phone to make notes. Yeah. We also have a review from Helper Bee Tina Freiling.
Yes.
And it says Peloton's density training collection is fun and rewarding, even if you don't love strength training.
I love hearing this. Tina's had so many good things about this particular collection. And I just want to point out, yeah, it is a collection. It's not a program. And Andy did that on purpose because he wanted people to be able to take these classes one off, even when you're done with it. And with the programs, you can't do that. So it is important to note you will find it under collections, not programs. But it is put together as a program. Anyway, the point is she absolutely loved it. That she said that there's 3 classes a week and they're different lengths, but each class has the same moves, but they do the exact same class recording. So this particular collection has 12 distinct classes. So you get a new playlist and you get fresh commentary for each class. They're not just, here's a week's worth of classes, do it 4 weeks in a row.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't like that, but a lot of people do. In this particular one, we're choosing to make it up, shake it up, do it different.
Okay. And if you want to read those full articles, they are over at theclipout.com.
They sure are.
So now a review that's not from us, from Bustle. I tried Peloton's hiking bootcamp for 2 weeks, and here's my honest review.
I mean, she loved it because, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Hiking is really perfect because it does combine your strength and cardio. And it's really like you get a good calorie burn, but you don't burn out all of your joints. And that's important. So it's a really good mix.
I guess it's probably a good mix if you're not ready for running, but you feel walking is not intense enough.
Or you need a break from running.
Yeah.
Like if you are a person who's running 3 and 4 days a week, 5 and 6 may not be a good. In fact, it's not a good idea for most people. So don't. But the hiking can still get you to that next plateau because you're still really pushing yourself and you're getting a lot of benefits from it without hurting your joints.
PC Mag has a list of the best rowing machines for 2023, and Peloton Row has made the list.
And similar to other of these that we have said, they kind of list them all.
Yes. but they are on there. So it's good that they're in the mix, I suppose.
It is. It is. And they get best for form feedback, which is amazing.
Peloton now hiring.
If you're wanting to work at Peloton, this could be your big moment. They are currently looking for a health and wellness editor for Peloton Interactive.
Yeah, and specifically to put together articles for The Output, which is their own little blog that they do. And they're going to be doing a lot of things like focusing on SEO and stuff like that. I felt that this was worth putting out there because it's just fascinating to me that it's called a health and wellness manager when really what they're doing is, they're making a content magazine.
Right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I just find it fascinating. Cool.
Peloton in court. Who's suing Peloton now?
To the shock of absolutely no one, there is a law firm looking to put together a class action lawsuit because of the seat post recall.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have much else to say about this.
Well,
except
I do have a couple things to say.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting because it's not the seat post recall. It's about the fact that the stock went down in response to the seat. And so therefore Peloton knew that they were going to put that out there. So shame on them because that means that they actually caused people's withholdings to go be smaller, and they did it on purpose. Like their money, they're messing with people's money.
Yeah.
And they did it all knowingly. And it's just like, so really any bad news is Peloton.
You get to sue them now. Yeah. It's funny because like they got sued over Tread Plus because they were like, you handled it so poorly and you tried to hide it and you tried to fight with the government and blah, blah, blah. And here they do the exact opposite and they get
still get sued.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting
thing. It's like being married to my ex-wife again.
Right. The other interesting thing about this is that they have that thing in place now. Peloton has that thing in place now where you can't file a class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
So, and this doesn't say that
like a class action arbitration.
It does
or
not
something.
say
Yeah.
that. It says lawsuit. It also says it hasn't been certified.
Well, here's why I think, and not a lawyer, but here's my guess, is because that thing they put in was for members. Right, this is for stockholders.
Oh, okay.
So your relationship with Peloton isn't as a user; it's as a partial owner.
So are you saying that because I am a member and a stockholder, that when I sign that as a user, I could still sue them as a member? I mean, I said that backwards.
As a stockholder?
As a stockholder.
I think so. Now Peloton might try to make the argument that, well, we want, if it gets anywhere, they won't maybe try to make the argument that, well, if you're a stockholder and a member, you agree not to do this, so throw all those people out. But at the end of the day, I don't know that it benefits them a whole lot because the settlement would be the same. It would just be divvied up among fewer people.
That is true.
So, but that's my guess as to why this is a lawsuit and not a class action arbitration that we've been seeing lately. So if there's any attorneys out there that know if I'm right or wrong, we would love to hear, especially if the answer is I'm right.
Oh, B, we're talking to you.
And coming up after this, we're going to talk to Dr. Jenn. She has tips for how to prioritize sleeping.
Getting the psychological edge with Dr. Jenn.
Joining us once again via the magic of ZoomTube is Dr. Jenn Mann, licensed marriage, family, and child therapist and sports psychology consultant. You may know her from VH1's Couples Therapy with Dr. Jenn, or VH1's Family Therapy with Dr. Jenn, or her long-running radio show, The Dr. Jenn Show. She's written 4 best-selling books, including The Relationship Fix, Dr. Jenn's 6-Step Guide to Improving Communication, Connection, and Intimacy. It's Dr. Jenn. Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
One of our listeners, Karen Eindorf Marquez, is having a struggle with sleep. She struggles to prioritize it. And I feel like, I know we've had this talk before, this is something you can relate to.
Yes, I can totally relate to this. It is challenging to prioritize sleep, especially if you're someone who, like me, can operate really well on like 3-4 hours for very long periods of time. But from everything I've read and been told, and the master class I took on sleep, and my partner, Eric, who constantly sends me articles to try to encourage me to sleep. Apparently sleep is very important. And it's very important, not only because of waking up feeling more rested, which can or cannot happen, but that your brain needs that time to actually flush out some chemicals that are, if they are not flushed out in 7 hours from, according to the master class I took with Matthew, and I'm forgetting his last name, but
If you slept more, you would remember his name.
Zing!
Exactly. Thank you. For sure. But apparently I didn't make that 7-hour cutoff, so I don't remember his last name, but you are more likely to get Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all kinds of diseases that have that are inflammatory in nature in terms of the brain. So in order to prioritize sleep, a few things to do. One is let other people in your household know that you're doing this, because if you're changing your habits and let's say you're tucking your kids in, or if you have teenagers like me who kind of err on the side of kind of wanting to stay up late or else just have so much homework and you want to say goodnight to them before they go to sleep, you need to let them know what your cutoff time is. If you want a tuck in, this is my cutoff time. You also want to let your partner know what your plan is, because also then you're more accountable and you can get that person's support. You want to make sure that you have all the things in place that you need in order to get yourself in bed at that time. Whether, let's say, you're someone who wears pajamas, like put out your pajamas and your whatever nighttime clothes. If you are struggling to fall asleep and you use like sleepy time tea or melatonin or anything like that, make sure that you have it available and in the place where you will use it, so you're not searching around the house getting yourself worked up. Also, we all know we're not supposed to have screen time for at least an hour before we go to bed, whether it's TV or our phones or our iPad. So get some good old-fashioned books if you like to read instead of being on your Kindle. Also come up with some things that help you to fall asleep so that you're not sitting in bed kind of shifting back and forth. I am a huge fan, as we all know, of both Ross Rayburn's meditation and also Mariana's meditation in Spanish. If you're someone who has a brain that's constantly going like me, I find that even if you don't follow it to a T, it's distracting enough for your brain to stop talking to you. I really like the Spanish one because Spanish isn't my first language, but I speak enough Spanish to understand. And it really, like, if my brains were super busy, I will listen to the Spanish one so that I really have to listen and be like, oh yeah, okay. And like tune in a little bit more.
That's smart.
So those are a few of the things that I recommend.
I would think that could work even if you don't speak any Spanish. Like now that you say that, like it's
just because you're so laser focused.
Yeah, because you can't understand any of it. And so you just kind of get into the cadence and rhythm of it and not start letting keywords take your brain off on weird paths.
Yeah. I mean, I learned to speak Spanish when I was very young. So when I do speak Spanish, even though my Spanish isn't fluent anymore, I think in Spanish. So when I hear her speaking Spanish, it kind of
uses a different
part of my brain and kind of flips over to that.
I love that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think that those are kind of good starting points. And I do recommend checking out some books on sleep. And there are some very good books. And that Matthew guy, whose last name I don't remember, he has a really good one. He's one of the foremost experts. I recommend Masterclass. It scared me enough to make some changes in my sleeping habits, which says a lot.
That does say a lot.
Absolutely. And it's got to be rough. If you're used to not sleeping, it's because you physically don't feel the need for it. So it's got to be rough to like force yourself to be like, it's time to sleep now.
You know, I'm a night owl by nature. And when I had kids, it meant I had to get up early. So the night owl part wasn't a problem until the get up early part was. And I'm actually, when I get in bed, I'm able to fall asleep. Like, thank you, Ross and Mariana, like within 10 minutes for the most part. But it's a matter of doing that thing that I think a lot of us women, especially moms, do, of like, there's so many things that I have to do that it's very easy to get caught up in the to-do list, as opposed to like, okay, this is my cutoff time. Even if I haven't completed all the things I need to do for my family, for myself, for whoever, I'm going to get in bed.
Amen.
You know, and there's also, there's this whole thing about what they call procrastination bedtime. And that a lot of women, moms in particular, again, that we find that, okay, everyone's asleep. This is now our silence time.
Yeah.
That this is like, that it's a kind of a part of self-care to be like, okay, everyone's sleeping, so no one has any demands on me. And now I get to do what I want to do. Now I can watch that show or listen to that podcast, like the Clip Out, or, organize my closet or whatever it is. But we need to prioritize sleep so that we can get that 7 hours that is apparently quite magical.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that. Until next time, where can people find you?
On all my social media at Dr. Jenn Man, 2 N's on Jen, 2 N's on Man. And I post all of my Peloton workouts on my story so people can see what classes I'm enjoying and check them out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Instructors in the news.
Jess King got to throw out the first pitch at a Red Sox game to celebrate Pride.
Yeah. I guess this is just something that Boston is going to do with different instructors all through the season now.
I guess. I mean, if it gooses sales, then they're probably going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Red Sox need to goose sales.
I wouldn't think they did.
That seems like a team that is perennially always drawing fans well,
I would agree. Yeah, I can't imagine that they have any issues. But Jess King did and said she enjoyed it. And yeah, people seem happy about it. So all good.
Allie Love made, I guess this isn't her first appearance on the Today Show, but I get maybe her first as an official correspondent.
I think so.
Okay. And she had tips for hydration. Tip number 1.
Drink water. And we're done.
Now we're just going to say water for 5 minutes.
No, I mean, there are a lot of good things to say about this, about keeping, like I have my hydrate bottle that reminds me to drink, and keeping a bottle of water with you all the time, and, you know, things like that. There's a lot of really good things to remember about hydration.
So does that mean we're going to have one of these every week now?
I don't know. We'll see.
We shall see.
I might lose interest very quickly.
Speaking of Allie, she talked to Well and Good, and they talked to her about her decoding her color selection on her outfits, and that they have meanings for the intensity level of the class you can expect.
It feels like she's trying to take a page from Robin's book.
I know. I was like, isn't that kind of already somebody's jam?
Yeah. But as I have said before, Allie very, very, very closely follows Robin's playbook.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense when you look at it like that. Also, purple's kind of always been Allie's thing, because when she does that Sundays with Love, it was all purple. Like, you were supposed to wear purple every week. So I feel like that we already knew that too. Ultimately, everybody's just trying to come up with content.
For sure. And while we're looking at Well and Good, they also spoke to Emma Lovewell, and she had tips for motivating yourself to get moving when you just feel blah.
Now this speaks to me. Come back from vacation.
Yes.
I don't want to do a darn thing.
See, they could create enough content, something will hit you in the right spot eventually.
Exactly. That's why they have to do so many things. Yep.
Also, while we're speaking about Emma, she sat down with People magazine, talked about her parents' interracial marriage.
Yeah, and can I just say that sometimes I feel like the dumbest person on the internet, because it was in response to Loving Day. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so it celebrates the couple that the Supreme Court case that overturned laws outlawing interracial marriage, and their last name, coincidentally
was Loving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's an awesome thing, obviously. I just was surprised. I had never heard anybody celebrate Loving Day. And so I think it's great that she's speaking up about it and bringing light to it.
And while we're speaking of Emma Lovewell, she was on the Freckled Foodie podcast talking about food and
freckles.
One would assume. But that's out there, episode 196, if you want to go check that out.
Awesome.
Cody Rigsby is hosting an event at Stonewall Inn for Pride, and it's to raise money for Glenn Close's Bring Change to Mind. I think it will have already happened by the time this airs.
Yeah, and I didn't have it in the list because we talked about it several weeks ago.
Yeah.
But Maddie was also doing his brunch out in L.A. this week for Pride Week, or for Pride rather. And so just want to make sure that we mention that as well.
And coming up after this, we're going to talk to Angelo from MetPro. People talk a lot about intermittent fasting. He's going to give you the pros and cons and let you know basically whether or not it works. So stick around.
The Clip Out.
Joining us today once again via the magic of ZoomTube is Angelo from MetPro, here to answer all of your fitness and nutrition questions. Hello.
Hi.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Well, we are happy you're here. I have another tricky question for you. This has been a month of tricky questions. Susan Dutton Burton says that she feels like there are too many cooks in the kitchen, all contradicting each other. Dr. Stacy Sims, for example, says women should absolutely not do intermittent fasting and should only work out fasted. Dr. Mary Claire Haver and others, for example, say women should absolutely fast for at least 16 hours a day, don't eat anything till noon, and work out fasted. All of the experts and doctors do seem to agree on one thing for women: strength training and HIIT are where it's at. Help.
Susan, very discerning, which is why my standby philosophy in all things is
It depends.
Yep. And so let me explain it. At MetPro, this is essentially what we do. we're not inventing new science. There's been plenty of science already invented out there. That's essentially what we do is people come to us and say, I've heard these 50 different things. Which one applies to me? And it depends. And so be wary of anyone who says, this is the one path and the only way, and all women should do this, or all men should do this, or in every case, because that's just simply not true. There is an argument for nearly every strategy depending on the scenario. So I think your question mostly revolves around meal timing and frequency, intermittent fasting, pros and cons. So if you can just Google my name, you could probably Google even the clip outs, intermittent fasting, because we have done bits and pieces on this multiple times. It's a really frequent question. Here is the abbreviated intermittent fasting. There is science behind it. Most of the science is presented as somehow eating with a time gate speeds or alters your metabolism. That is substantially false. There is an element, but not to the degree that it is suggested by people promoting it with the bro science method. That said, it is indeed an effective for some means of caloric restriction. However, there are some negative consequences to it, which can end up doing more harm than good. Generally speaking, people who see good results with intermittent fasting are typically people who were not previously eating clean or dieting. Rather, they are people who are unable to change eating habits by time gating. What's happening is they are removing a third of the calories consumed. In other words, instead of eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, now they're only eating McDonald's for lunch and dinner. That is a net win. Most people that ask me the question, that does not apply to. Most people that ask me it are like, I've done this diet, I've done that diet, I eat clean, I exercise, I'm doing everything right. How do I lose this last 15 pounds? For you, likely intermittent fasting, statistically, this is just our observations, but 20,000 people in at MetPro, we have some good observations, is that intermittent fasting will be the fastest route to 5 pounds lost and the fastest route to 10 gained back. If you do it the right way, which is focusing on your metabolic pace, you will indeed lose weight a little slower, but the likelihood of that weight staying off and losing more total weight is significantly greater. So does intermittent fasting apply to you?
It depends. Very nice.
Well, I feel like with a lot of the different diets you hear out there, especially the mainstream ones, not just the crack pottery, but I think a lot of it comes down to, well, which one are you going to do? Like, right. Some are really easy for some people and really hard for others. And so if there's one that sounds like it fits your lifestyle better and you're more apt to stick with it, well, then that's the one that's going to work.
I agree with that. I also have a client, a MetPro client that they do intermittent fasting, but they do it from 4:30 p.m. till 8 a.m. So it doesn't, it's not substantially like changing their workout or changing anything else. Like it's like, okay, yeah. So you just eat your dinner a little earlier. That's not a crazy change to everything. And you're being consistent with it. So
that there's actually a lot of optimization in that. That works really well. But I would wager the average person would find that strategy very difficult.
Yes.
But like Tom said, so we have over 650 meal plans in our CRM that have just literally been added one at a time. Oh, there's a use case. This client needs this, that client needs that. But what we have is an adherence score. So we have a rating to see how adherent is someone on this meal plan. So a lot of people think, well, just put me on the best meal plan. Well, the best meal plan is highly influenced by exactly what Tom said. What will you adhere to? And that's what our coaches focus on with a client as well. I had you on that approach before and it worked for 48 hours, but then your adherence dropped off to, below 70%. And so therefore the net result was this meal plan is actually more effective. Those are all the little nuances people don't think about when selecting a meal plan that's optimized for them. And that's where it is a combination of science and art. And so I won't geek out on that too much longer, but these were great questions. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Susan. If your primary objective is performance, generally speaking, you're going to find most of the top end athletes are going to err more on the side of frequent fuelings. If your primary objective is weight loss, then it's a matter of application, how you want to approach it, as there's multiple ways to be effective.
Awesome.
Well said.
Thank you. So if people would like something like that tailored for them, since we were talking specifically about tailoring for them, where can they find you? And of course, Crystal.
We would love to visit more. Come see us at metpro.co/TCO.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Peloton Celebrity Sightings.
Pink is getting ready to go out on tour, and her summer is a stadium tour, not an arena tour. Now you, Crystal, of course, have tickets to see an arena show.
Yes, because we don't do stadium, and if we can help it.
If we can help it. And she's not coming to St. Louis, so we had to travel no matter what. So when there's an arena show in Kansas City, which is mere 4 hours from here. So like a dutiful husband, I scored you some sweet, sweet tickets. So, but that I did not do this segment just to brag. It's just a happy coincidence.
I am so excited about going to that show. God, I love Pink shows. They're so fun.
They are great shows.
They really are.
But Pop Sugar talked to Pink about the workout routines, because Pink is in great shape, but her workout routines that she uses to get ready for her tours, and she mentions her Peloton.
She uses Peloton to stay in shape. That's one of the many things she does. But like, if you've never seen one of her shows, they are not just dancing around the stage, not to take away from people who dance around the stage.
Yeah.
But it takes the fitness to a whole new level because of all of her aerial stunts. Like, they are really intense. And so she has to be like in amazing shape.
Right.
And so she always kills it, and I can't wait to see it.
It makes me wonder what a Pink show is going to look like in 15 or 20 years, right? Like,
because she can't do that forever.
Yeah, you can't do that forever. And so, and I don't know how old she is, but she's been around for 25, 30 years.
I think she's a little bit younger than I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to think the clock's ticking on how long she can keep doing things like this. Like, I'm not trying to disparage her, just
of course
time is linear,
exactly,
and it works the same way for all of us. So I do wonder what the pivot will look like whenever that day comes.
Me too. I definitely wonder, which is why I want to go see her as many times as I can now, because who knows what the future will bring. Because sometimes artists are like, well, I can't do it the way I used to, so now I don't want to do it at all.
So I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen.
Yeah,
it's not like she doesn't have money.
Also true. So. I was fortunate enough to just think about like when, like the last 20 years or so, when Liza Minnelli tours, it's all just her doing a cabaret singing, and like, but she was an amazing dancer. And so I was fortunate enough to see her as a kid, not fully recognizing the importance of it, but when she could still really dance, and it was a very dance intensive show. And so now I'm very lucky.
Yeah, you are.
I got to see that.
Yeah, so. I really thought that was going to be a monkey show.
Yeah.
Or monkey story when you started that. That's why I laughed. Because I was like, I was not expecting Liza Minnelli.
Peloton Artist Collaborations.
The latest artist series is out, and it features Lil Kim. I always feel so dumb saying Lil.
Well, you can call her Queen Bee. That works too.
You can?
Yeah, that's one of her nicknames.
Oh, I thought that was a Beyonce thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just telling you what the internet says.
Okay. Well, the internet's never wrong.
Right. Yeah, they never get anything wrong. But this is going to be, there's going to be, what do you call it? A boot camp.
Okay.
There's going to be a run, and there's going to be a ride. So lots of fun stuff. Actually, all of those are taking place on June 15th. So by the time you hear this, they will have already occurred. So hopefully you got to check it out. If you didn't, go back and take them on demand.
They're still out there.
Yeah.
Other connected fitness.
So Tonal is going to do one of their infamous Tonal talks, which once featured me.
It did. Yeah.
But this one's a little bit more important. It will feature, I guess, the first big appearance from their brand new CEO.
Not just an appearance, like she's going to actually answer questions.
Wow.
And so there's been so many people like, what is happening with Tonal?
Yeah.
How is this going to go? How is that going to go?
So that's a big deal. I wonder, like, who would they get with enough stature to interview her, like her first big public appearance? I mean, that would have to be someone fairly significant, don't you think?
I don't know.
I mean, someone just,
I think they're trying to keep it kind of like organic and like in their own backyard. So they're trying to tone it down.
Gotcha. Is it like is it like Oprah? Is that who they're gonna get?
No.
Or Gail?
No.
Oprah's bestie Gail? Something like that? Katie Couric, maybe?
You have to go down the list a little bit. A Tonal user.
Does Katie Couric have a Tonal?
No.
Oh.
No.
So then whoever could it be?
It's just me.
What? It's you? It was you the whole time?
It was. Yeah. So if you are curious about what is going on over at Tonal, because they have had so many changes in the last year, and you want to hear from the brand new CEO, her name is also Crystal Zell. She will be interviewed by me on June 21st. It will be taking place live in the official Tonal community. So you get a chance to listen, and I'm sure it will live out, well, as long as I don't screw it up, it'll live out there on the internets forever.
And you know how you can tell they're taking this super seriously?
They didn't ask you.
Right.
They weren't like, Crystal and Tom.
Yes. They were like, what happened with John Foley? He had Crystal and Tom interview him. Yeah, they're like, no. Absolutely not. Hard pass.
I don't know why they made the choices that they did.
Oh, I think we know exactly why.
But I am very honored to be asked.
Absolutely. It's super cool.
And I'm very excited to have the opportunity and just to get to know Crystal Zell. And, I like to ask questions.
Oh, I know.
I like to find out the why.
Questioned by you on more than one occasion.
That's true.
In case you missed it.
Pump Up the Volume 7 is now available on all platforms.
Yep. So that just means if you had a guide, you could have access to it only for the first 6 weeks. And now, or 7 weeks, whatever it is. Anyway, now everybody can get it. So yay! So
if you want to check it out, go get it. It's there and waiting for you.
All upper body focus.
Also, Country Happy Hour Season 4 is now out there for you to check out. Yep.
Hannah Corbin is teaching that. Lots of music stars will be featured. Country music stars.
Well, yes. Peloton also dropped three
Yes.
German language classes featuring the work of Tupac.
Yeah, I think we might have mentioned this last week. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting that several of these dropped back in April, and now they're kind of following up with that in June, but this time we're getting the German editions.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. There are also 3 Spanish language classes for people to check out.
Yeah, this is a new series called Para los Padres. And so there's going to be multiple classes that'll all be performed in Spanish.
Oh, so these for Father's Day, presumably.
Yes, for the fathers. That's right.
My Spanish finally paid off.
It only took 25 years.
Yes.
Well,
I should tell the story of how I almost flunked Spanish. Maybe we'll save that for Patreon.
Yeah, that is a good Patreon.
If you want to hear the story about how I forgot to show up for my Spanish final.
It is hilarious.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I will share that on the next Patreon if Crystal remembers to nudge me.
I will try.
Okay. Peloton Apparel has a new collaboration with Varley.
Yes, with Varley. Basically, think tennis clothes, like think country club tennis clothes. So bunch of Peloton stuff, totally not my thing, but there's a whole bunch of people this is perfect for, and it's a little capsule collection, got all your little summer stuff going on, so you can check that out. And if you get our newsletter, we'll take you straight to it.
For the love of Christ, what is up with their website?
I don't know.
It was doing this to me today, where no matter what, it keeps choose your country, and I keep clicking my country, and then it says choose your country.
Yeah, that never happens to me, so I have no idea.
And I'm logged in as you.
Well, that's real weird.
Can't wait for people to complain about that on the OPP.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Selena Samuela is celebrating, or has celebrated, 5 years with Peloton.
Yeah, and she told her story on Peloton Studios, as all of the instructors have been doing on their anniversaries. They have 30 seconds to tell how they got here, and I love hearing these little stories.
Do they ever cut them off mid-sentence?
No, they like take a whole bunch of sentences and splice them together.
And they splice them together.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I thought it'd be funny if they're like, one take, 30 seconds, go. I'm like, so, and then I thought...
And that's it.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary to Selena.
Some people are probably like, you should do that with a show.
I know, right?
So our last two stories, and in case you missed it, aren't Peloton specific, but we thought you might have interest in them. The first is from Women's Health, and it talks about runner imposter syndrome, which you fight.
Well, I mean, after reading this article, apparently everybody does.
Yeah.
I thought it was super fascinating. I feel like somebody sent this to me. I feel like it was Darcy or Nikki that sent this to me.
Yeah.
And I was really, really interested in this because it talks about this, basically a running retreat that Nike did, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was a whole bunch of people, all these different Nike people that are runners. I mean, they're runners. They've run all kinds of things.
They got invited there by Nike, so presumably they're running at a pretty high level.
Exactly. And so it's like a multi-day camp, right? They're driving out there, and they're like introducing them, and he's like, okay, so share your name, icebreaker, right? And a little bit about your relationship with running. And every single person was like, well, I just did a half marathon, but I'm definitely not like a real runner. Or I'm honestly am really bad at running, and I'll probably be behind you guys on this trip, like walking a lot. Or I signed up for a race a few months ago, but I'm definitely not a runner like so-and-so. I have said literally all of those things.
Yes.
There's not one. And so I was like, this really resonated with me because I was like, oh my God. But I thought it was interesting that almost every single person, despite the fact that they were all joggers, marathoners, walk runners, 5K participants, every single one of them did not believe they were really runners. So this whole article was basically about, let's change our vocabulary. Let's stop saying that. And I'm going to be the first one. I am a runner.
Okay. I am not.
No, but you choose.
If I said I was a runner, that would be the imposter syndrome.
It would be.
And then the other article is the best exercises for digestion.
Well, this is actually Peloton related because this quotes Kristen McGee.
Oh, they didn't identify her as Peloton because they did a Control F for Peloton and nothing came up.
Well, I think it says fitness instructor Kristen McGee, who's been a yogi for many years.
That's what we think of that, Health Central.
Yeah.
It's like we used to have this complaint when we were in radio all the time. If you would have if the news would do a positive news story on you, like if your radio station did like some sort of fundraiser and raise a bunch, the news, if they would choose to cover it, would be like a local radio station, right? Yeah. But if like your weekend overnight guy gets a DUI, it's KPNT 105.7 The Point, jock.
It's true.
Gets a DUI.
It's true.
Yeah.
Although I will say most instructor conversations that are out there, they do mention Peloton.
For sure.
For all we know, this was a conversation they went like, who knows? They could have had this conversation outside of Peloton's approval.
They might not have went through Peloton Press, and so it was like, well, you can't identify me as Peloton, but you can use my name. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, great tips in here overall about digestion, but also I love getting advice from our Peloton instructors.
Absolutely. So what exercise should I do to keep my pooping?
Any.
Keep my blue... My brown check mark.
Oh, gross, Tom. Gross. Honestly, though, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but cardio is really good. But you don't want to go too extreme on the cardio all the time. So. Gotcha.
You get a watery blue check mark or brown check mark.
Gross. Gross.
Peloton birthdays.
And we just have one birthday this week. It's Selena Samuela, not just celebrating 5 years with Peloton, but she's also celebrating her birthday on June 22nd.
Happy birthday, Selena.
Happy birthday. And our interview of the week, so lucky, fresh on the heels of our brown checkmark discussion. If he's listening right now, he's probably so honored. Luckily, he's already done it, so he can't take it back. And I think after talking to us, he knows exactly the type of people we are. And by we, I mean me. And he's probably okay with it.
Yeah,
but it's Mitch Slater, who is a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. He's actually attended some concerts with
some.
Well, I was going to say with Jenn Sherman.
Oh, okay.
Like
yes.
he's run into her at shows, and he's a big Peloton user, and he's got some great stories about the early days of Howard Stern. He worked with him back in the day, and Larry King and stuff like that.
Holy cow! I enjoyed this interview so much. Like, we had a hard time turning off the equipment. Like, and even after we turned off the equipment, we went on another half hour.
Yeah, the only reason we're probably not still talking to him is because I had to pee.
Yeah, that's true.
So if I look fidgety on the YouTube video, that's why. It's because about 3 seconds in, I'm like, I think I gotta pee.
And I don't think you actually said his name, Mitch Slater.
Mitch Slater. So definitely you want to stick around and check that out.
Absolutely.
Checking in with the Peloton community.
Joining us today via the magic of ZoomTube is Mitch Slater. Hey, Mitch, how's it going?
Great to be with you guys.
So, Crystal always starts with asking where you found Peloton, but I'm going to completely side rail.
I don't even know that I need to be here today because I think Tom's about to take over.
So before we started the show, I was just killing time while Crystal was getting the tech stuff set up, and you had mentioned you worked in radio, you worked at DC 101. I was like, when you were there, and you started to say that you were there. Well, that DC 101, for people that aren't radio nerds, is kind of famous for it's where Howard Stern really started as the Howard Stern that you know him as today with morning shock jock radio. And you were there the day he signed on. And you started telling me that story, and we were like, shut up. We're not recording.
Well, as I have said, all roads in my life seem to lead down the Springsteen path. But I actually had the opportunity not that long ago at a show standing next to Baba Booey, and I had met him before and talked, and I could have been him. In many ways, I'm glad I'm not, except for financially.
Except for probably. The money part.
Yeah. But Howard started at DC 101. I was at college in DC at George Washington University, doing all of the internship stuff. I was program manager of our college radio station where we discovered The Clash, but that's a separate story. I don't know if it's true, but I still claim it. And I was told that they fired the morning guy, Dave Brown, and they were bringing in this crazy guy from Detroit. That's all I knew. Didn't even know his name. And I got there at 5:30 in the morning, and in walks this lanky guy, just one of the freakiest looking dudes I've ever seen in my life. And, I'm 20, so what the hell do I know? And he goes, who are you? And I go, I'm your intern, Mitch. He goes, okay, you're now boy Mitch. I said, okay. He said, go put the cans on, go in the other studio. And I go, Mr. Stern, I was told that I'm not allowed to be on the air. Get in the other studio. I'm like, yes, sir. And I go in the other studio, and he goes, on the air. And I'm wearing these headphones and a giant mic, down in the radio station. And he talks a little bit and crazy, if you heard some of his earlier stuff. And he says, there's a lot of traffic out there this morning. Boy Mitch is out on the Beltway. What's going on, Boy Mitch? And I just kind of winged it. And I said, well, it's just about as bad as you can, DC, I don't think you're going to get there from the Beltway. And all of a sudden I hear sounds of like dinosaurs. And like all of these like crazy animal sounds. And I go, I just played along. I just winged it with him, had fun. And then he went into his shtick, and, we just played music and talked about a lot of crazy things. And later that morning, when Denise Oliver, and this is all in the movie, a lot of it is in, the movie, Private Parts. And she blasted him, and then she brought me in, and she said, I heard you on the air this morning. We told you. I said, well, what was I supposed to do? She said, well, I should fire you, but since I'm not paying you, I won't fire you. I said, okay. And, I think I was there maybe 4 or 5 months. And after about 2 months, he was really frustrated that he didn't have the people he wanted, which was Fred. That's all he had.
Yeah.
So he finally got the approval to bring in Fred. And then one morning, they said they've hired a newscaster for him. I'm like, oh, this ought to be interesting. And in walks the absolute opposite of Howard Stern. I mean, I knew she had been a nurse. I knew, she'd done some radio in Baltimore. Forget that she looked very different, but I was like, oh my God, this poor woman. I can't imagine what's going to happen. And he put her in the studio, and the rest is rock and roll history. And they connected, they clicked. It was really fun. And for the 6 months I was there before I went on to do my next internship, which was with Charlie Rose, which led to meeting Larry King, who hired me for my first job out of college as all-night producer. But meeting Howard Stern, and then years later, just circle back now, we're in the 90s, and Larry used to blast Howard Stern. Howard Stern used to blast Larry King. He would play like the sound of a ventilator. And this was Larry was probably in his 60s, right?
Oh, God.
And he had a heart attack, and just mock him. And one morning, I had gotten Gary's private number because I had called once to talk to Gary to tell him the story. I thought it would be interesting. And he thought it was interesting, but I didn't go on the air. So that morning I called and I said, I think I'm the only person in the world that worked both for Howard Stern and Larry King. And within 2 seconds, I'm on the air and I hear Robin, do we know you? I was like, who are you? And I'm like, well, I was Boy Mitch then. Right when you started, I was there, and Howard's go, oh yeah, a college kid. I go, yeah, I was there the first few weeks, and we reminisced for a little bit. And then I said, listen, dude, you're killing my old boss, Larry King. And he said, oh my God, what was it like working for him? Must have been terrible. And honestly, I told some interesting Larry King stories, which I think made that part of the episode fun. And actually, an old girlfriend who I hadn't talked to probably 10 years at that point was listening somewhere in the city or Long Island and called me afterwards because I had mentioned her and mentioned she was part of one of the stories having to do with Larry King when he came to my Super Bowl party with all these other college students. And
he was looking for a wife.
50s. Yeah. Larry had a look. Larry always, if you were tall, blonde, you were a possible wife of Larry King's. And, I danced around that topic with him for many years. And I interviewed him on my radio show. And then I eventually interviewed him on my podcast. And one of the last interviews I did with him out at his home in Beverly Hills, I decided to ask the question because I had asked listeners, what would you want to ask Larry? And I think 90% asked me that question. So I said, Larry, I'm going to go there. And he goes, Mitch, as I told you before, you're the host. This is your show. You go wherever you want. I said, okay, Larry, 9 wives. He goes, it's real simple. I'm from Brooklyn. You fall in love, you get married. I said, well, maybe after the first 7, you didn't think like maybe there was another strategy? He goes, no. He goes, this one ain't going so well either. And she was upstairs.
Oh my God.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. And there's a lot to that story and a lot of irony. And also, I wound up getting to know their sons, their twin boys, pretty well, especially toward the end of his life. And because he died of COVID during COVID and I wasn't able to, be there for any ceremony. But I was actually interviewed all over the country because people found my name with Larry King on a lot of things that I had done over the years. And I was able to tell some wonderful stories about him. And I learned a lot, and I think when it comes to podcasting, the 2 things that I learned, which you guys are really good at on your show, and you've done this already, is number 1, you're a good listener. Larry said to me, I never learned anything with my mouth open. And was that true? And I never could understand how we would have guests like, I don't know, James Michener or, a lot of people from Watergate, Reagan, Carter, and they had written books. Larry never would read the book. And he said, my job is to be curious. He goes, the listener hasn't read it. I haven't read it. And Larry loved to read, so it was not that he was lazy. He just felt like being curious was the most important thing. And Honestly, throughout my life and just about everything I've done, those two things really helped me a lot. So that's a long and winding road back to Howard Stern.
No,
Wow,
absolutely.
that's fabulous. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes. And it is funny when we talk about interviews. When we first started doing this was something Crystal would get really mad at me about.
Oh my God, yeah.
We'll have a list of questions that we'll send to people, and sometimes we follow them, but I'm really bad about completely ignoring the questions and just asking whatever I want based on whatever somebody said. And she is I tease her because she's a project manager, which is also part of why the show is so put together so well. But she's just like, but we've got to ask this fifth question. And I was like, but what they're saying is so much more interesting than the fifth question. The fifth question can go itself. Like, who cares?
You are so, oh my God, you're so dead on. And when I started doing the podcast, which, I realized was uniquely different than the radio show, which was a financial radio show and very, definitely more on that topic, even though my podcast is called Financially Speaking with Mitch Slater. I interviewed, everybody from Larry King to entertainers to musicians, as well as business or financial side, every little bit here and there. But I also wrote scripts, and I would, if I got to maybe 3 or 4 out of the 8 to 10 questions that I would write, it's all because they would lead me in another direction. I always had the same last question, which I ripped off from Tim Ferriss from Tribe of Mentors, which is the billboard question. What would you do if you were granted a giant billboard? A magic genie gave you a billboard, a message to the world. What would it be? Blah, blah, blah. So I did steal that. But, some of the best ideas out there, we borrow, so to speak.
Some of Letterman's best bits were Steve Allen's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And boy, did you hit a home run on Steve Allen. So my aunt was Steve Allen's writer.
What?
Oh, wow.
One of Steve Allen's many writers. And I got to meet him also working for Larry King. And even better than that, I got to meet Sid Caesar, who was really, I'm 62. I was, a child of the 60s. And his big popularity was really the 50s and 60s. And I really only watched the reruns in black and white, especially. But I appreciated his comedy and getting to meet him and Milton Berle and a number of other real, Don Rickles, these classic comedians were, this was every single night, so it was, I kind of, as my kids have said many times, I've peaked in my early 20s, but the more I've taken them to Bruce concerts and they've met Steve Van Zandt and they've gotten to do some other pretty cool things, and and I used to work with Taylor Swift's dad. So, there were certain things that made me a little cooler later on.
A little. Kids never think their parents are cool.
They don't. They're just
it's our job. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Well, and it's all they've ever known. So they're like, well, of course you do that. Whatever.
Everybody's parents do
and then
something
their friends
whatever.
come over and their friends are like, what is all this autograph stuff? Yeah.
Well, my daughter thinks you're cool. My daughter's a writer at People magazine. And Peloton's one of her beats. And she's done pretty much most of the interviews with all of the coaches and a lot with Ali Love and forget the one who just had another baby.
Robin's pregnant again.
Robin, yes. So she's done 3 interviews with Robin. In fact, Robin brought her in for a ride and she got the hot seat. So she's all, in Robin's ride. And then she's also got into I guess it was a workout session with the really, really tall woman, blonde woman.
Bex Gentry?
I don't know,
yeah.
They're all tall to me.
Very, very, she was very tall. And she was just on that, which is kind of fun, being on the bike. And I wish, Jenn had somehow got me in for the Bruce ride, but it was pretty cool watching my daughter on these rides while I was doing them.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so fun. I had no idea that your daughter wrote for People. We cover those stories all the time.
Yeah,
we probably cover her stories.
Georgia, shout out to Georgia Slater. I'm very proud of her. And following in her mom's footsteps, who's been at Time Magazine for many years. So
Wow. You guys have all kinds of fun stories, I'm sure. Well, okay. So how did you end up in the Peloton world? And because I want to hear how like Bruce Springsteen, your love of Bruce and your love of Peloton, how all that came together.
Sure. Well, it's Jenn Sherman. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yes.
I've been to 300 shows in, 45 years. And you kind of get to meet a lot of different people when you're in the pit, especially. And I had met her a number of times. And I'm not saying we're friends or anything like that, but, kind of knew each other. And Peloton had first come out, and they just opened a store in Short Hills, New Jersey, which was their first store. And I heard that Jenn Sherman was going to be out at the store. And I said to my wife, I said, we both love to bike. We both are cyclists. We've taken a lot of bike trips. My wife's a much better biker than I am. But for me, I bike for stress relief and music. All right. So whether the trips we've done, some cool trips to like Napa and fun places and the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky and stuff like that. But so I'm always listening to music in one ear. Let's be fair, folks. Wearing a helmet, only in one ear.
Mono is underrated. If they they mix for it properly, it can actually be better than stereo.
There you go. Exactly. And Beatles. Listen, I love listening to old Beatles songs.
Man, I bought the Beatles in mono by accident. It was on sale, really cheap, like that 10 disc collection. It was on sale for like $40, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy that." And it shows up it's in mono, and I was like, "Well, son of a." And then I put it on. I kept it for like a year, and I finally like threw it in a player, and I was like, it was like rediscovering the Beatles. It absolutely. It sounds so much better.
Yeah. When I've learned a lot about finding mono records from my friend Rich Russo, who's has a show called Anything, and he's on Little Steven's Underground Garage, and just a great guy. And a lot of shows when we've gone Bruce or Steven around the country, we always wound up in record stores. And I started buying a number of mono records and realizing, and my dad, most of his records were mono. So they're beautiful to listen to.
I think people lose sight of the fact that until the early 70s, nobody really had stereo. And so all the attention was focused on mastering it for a mono record, and stereo was an afterthought.
And I think when you realize how horrible, when you listen to music, you think our kids' generation, they think, well, how great music sounds on their, AirPods or everything else. And then, you put on a record. I remember doing this with Taylor Swift with my daughter, and I said, well, let's listen to this record. Okay. You just remixed this herself, redid it. And we put it on, and I said, you keep this record. And she was like, oh my God, it sounds so much better. I'm like, yeah, these big speakers. This is sound. This is what I grew up with. This is Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. This is what we really want to hear. Anyway, digressing back, which the ADD is kicking in real quickly there. I met Jenn, and I knew Jenn was going to be there. And I'm like, and I said to my wife, I said, I think my birthday was coming up, and it's a nice birthday present. I said, but I really would like to bike in the house. I'm not a treadmill person. I don't like running. I'm trying to stay in shape. This might be great. She did indoor spinning with one of those things where, you bring your bike in and connect it to some wheels and stuff. And I tried it once, and I felt like an idiot. I just could not do it. So we went in the store, and Jenn was there, and Jenn gets me on the bike and said, she goes, I know how I'm going to sell you this bike, Mitch. And I go, I have a feeling. And boom, she had just done a ride. I think it was called the Thunder Road Ride. And this is when they only had maybe 2 to 3 songs of Bruce on. And I'm sitting there in the store, and I'm riding with Jenn standing next to me, listening to Thunder Road, one of my favorite songs. And I look at my wife, and I'm like, yeah, this is my life. And I bought the Peloton and started riding. And sadly, Springsteen was probably the least amount played of any artist for the last 7 or 8 years. And there was it was very, very difficult to get the rights and everything that went on. And, John Landau and his whole world, you just could look at the ticket debacle that just happened on this tour. It's no wonder that happened. But it did happen. So Jenn is definitely my go-to, 30-minute, 45 minutes. I love the rides with her. I mean, she's younger than me, probably by 7-8 years, but she's definitely more my generation, my music. She is not about Jenn. Some say she is because she tells stories and all this, but if you watch some of the others, and I will name names, they're definitely more about their looks and their being an influencer and everything else that they do. With some exceptions. I love Hannah Corbett. I think she's terrific. I love her vinyl rides. And I like fun stuff. I like the done and dusted woman from England, all the time. And, so I had fun with it, but yeah, Jen Sherman and Bruce Springsteen, my worlds were colliding. So it just made sense that I was going to get this bike and we love it. My daughter has one in her apartment. My son actually lived in the building in New York, next to Peloton Studios, and half of a lot of the riders lived in his building. So he had an experience. I think it was Cody, where he was on the Peloton bike in the gym in his building. And this is like towards the middle of COVID, because he got a COVID deal, really great deal on an apartment that he would never have afforded. And he's riding, and Cody's leading the ride, and all of a sudden he feels a tap on his shoulder, and it's Cody, and he almost like went flying off the bike, like, whoa!
Oh my God!
I mean, it made sense to him because he knew. I think he might have known he lived in the building, but it was just sort of kind of crazy how that happened. So
Yeah, that's amazing. But recently with Jen Sherman's Bruce Springsteen ride, so you did like a live stream. Okay, so you got to go to the class, like where she was playing it, right? Is it my
No, I did the live stream from my home here in Westfield, New Jersey. I did not get to go to the class. You may want to get me off the show now, but no, I was not.
Well, thanks for joining us.
No, not at all.
Thank you very much. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We got the wrong guy. No, I did not get invited. Thank you very much, Jen. But they have a whole system in place that's very fair, and that's fine. And honestly, I was glad. I've never gone inside there. I like being on my own doing it. So I don't, I'm sure it's fun. My daughters love being in the studio.
It's fun.
So
yeah.
I just felt, because I have this weird Springsteen following, because I've been very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and in really great locations at a lot of shows, special events, where Bruce has played or Stevie's played, who I do have a relationship and a friendship with Steve Van Zandt. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do special here? I feel like the fans in, Europe and Amsterdam and the 31 countries that, I'm followed with on my podcast, which, when I first saw that, I'm like, why is that happening? And then I realized, well, they're Bruce fans and they know I'm interviewing members of the band and stuff. So, yeah, I could not wait. I mean, I was just so pumped up. I said, all right, I got to live stream this. And, this is me. I am, just the kid that wanted to be an actor and obviously be on the air and definitely be, I may be Jewish, but I'm a ham, that's just sort of the way it is.
Just don't eat yourself.
Exactly. So although I do like ham, but anyway, my mom used to make a great ham, believe it or not. She's 96 and I kid her about that. I mean, she's the only Jew I know that made like an amazing ham. No, I just said, why not? Let's live stream it a little bit, thinking, a couple of people will watch, and I was so happy that it kind of took off a little bit, and I got interviewed by like a reporter here in Asbury Park, who writes, and a New Jersey reporter and stuff that I always give stories to, and it was just so much fun, and Jen, I knew the set list was going to be perfect. I mean, it's funny because in my head, I've made probably 50 set lists that I would use, because I have a lot of set lists that I put on Spotify or made myself for my own biking outdoors. And Jen was pretty dead on. And I think she knew that for the first ride, you better get the hits in there.
Yeah.
And yes, she threw in the 13-minute live Jungle Land, but which is for the real diehard fans. I mean, biking to Clarence's solo is a very emotional thing for us that love the big man. So she, I mean, you know, and she tells her stories. She has a great story of, you know, when she first met Bruce at a restaurant in Italy, and he came over. She was with a bunch of her girlfriends, and this is a Bruce story that so many people have told. He sat down, he bought all the girls tequila, and they did shots. I mean, this is just Bruce. He does this. You know, he got arrested for it once, but that was a misunderstanding in Sandy Hook, New Jersey. But yeah, I mean, those are the kind of things that, you know, just led me to do this, and she just totally crushed it. I mean, just crushed that ride, and I'm so excited that you know, now the music of Bruce Springsteen is added to the other great music that's on there too. You know, which is really cool. You know, another sidebar to that is my neighbor 2 houses down is Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls.
Oh my God.
Who also has a Peloton.
Yeah, he has a Peloton.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yes, he does. And first time I went in his house, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, I saw it, and I said to him, I said, John, you know, I mean, you know, what's that like when your music? He goes, he says, Mitch, I try so hard to get rides that don't have my songs on it. And you have no idea. Like, I don't want to do this. And honestly, I might even be able to get him for your show or something.
That would be great.
What?
John is one. First of all, he's the nicest guy.
We saw John Resnick at a local. So I book a concert venue in town. That's what I do for a living. And he was there for a radio show just as a solo act, and we were totally caught off guard by how funny
and kind he is. Like, so funny. He told such great stories during the whole show. We were dying.
It was just him and a guitar, but he was really, really funny up there, which was I was not anticipating.
So that would be amazing, sir.
Yes. Well, I will definitely ask John. I mean, John, you know, is, you know, he moved here, I guess, about 6 years ago from L.A. He married a local girl, and a 6-year-old daughter, really cute. And he just, you know, he's on tour a lot. He's not around, but, you know, we've hung out, and he's, you know, been sober probably 15 years, and a big part of his life, but he likes to make drinks for his friends. He likes to make his martinis, and he, of course, did my podcast, and then he did a big event for the company I work for. I had him, it was like a Christmas time thing, and UBS, who I work for, is UBS Arena, and we did a show called Advice on Ice that I hosted, and I brought John in to sing 2 songs, Better Days, and one of the songs off of his...
Better Days.
That's my favorite.
Better Days should be a Christmas radio staple.
Yes.
It is such a good song.
Yeah, and I, you know, and he said, you know, he was like, I can't believe you're not asking me to play Iris. I said, John, I you know, I'm not that guy. I mean, to me, the fact that you offered to do this is beyond approach, because I know what you could get to do this financially. And I'm going to ask you to do a song with 1 billion downloads. Yeah, people know Iris, but Better Days fits the topic of the show. Mm-hmm. It fits the time of year. And honestly, I can, you know, we didn't have a keyboard, but I was thinking I could accompany you.
The truth comes out. I don't know how to play Iris, John. That's the problem.
Yeah. I got Better Days down, but he did it acoustically. And in the middle of the take, his guitar string broke, and he played through it. He just played through it, and, you know, he says, this is happening on stage. I know how to play every one of my songs with every string possibly breaking. But he wasn't electric, so it was fine. So you know, it's fun for me when I have a Goo Goo Dolls song come on at the rides. But John loves his Peloton, you know, and he has it in the same position in his house as I do, which is in our. It took a lot. I think it was COVID that got my wife to agree. I think because my kids were home for a while, to bring it from the basement and have it right by the living room window, so I could look outside. And honestly, I've used the bike so much more in that location than down in the dungeon, you know, in the basement. And his is the same position in his house too.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm curious when it comes to Bruce Springsteen. Like you said that you're obsessed with him. Is he like your band? Like Tom is obsessed with the Monkees.
That's
like,
my band is the Monkees. In fact, when you said Steven Van Zandt, the first thing I thought was like, tell him I said thank you. He's such a supporter of the Monkees on Underground Garage, and like that's a band that people have shit on for 55 years, and they don't deserve it. And for someone of his musical stature to recognize the importance and quality of the Monkees is like, it's very heartening.
Well, and Stephen, besides Underground Garage, you know, he has a nonprofit that I've actually been on the board, Teach Rock, and he includes Monkees in the actual curriculum that is being used in schools around the country.
That's awesome.
And I did get to see right before COVID. It was like maybe a year before, Mickey and Mike's show, which was really great because to see Nesmith together. I had seen them
I don't think he
all
can see
together on a Merrill Lynch trip years ago when they had Herman's Hermits and the Monkees play in San Francisco at some event. But watching Dolenz and Nesmith really, and
that's literally the T-shirt I'm wearing right now.
Oh my God!
Mickey and Mike show. Yeah.
I mean, I had so much fun at that show. I mean, I shot a lot of video that night at Count Basie here in New Jersey in Red Bank, and yeah, they were just, you know, so. And it was right after Peter Tork died. It was maybe within a month, and they had a little video about him, and they listen. They're a part of history. I mean, they. You know, yes, they were formed on television. I realize that. Yes, Neil Diamond wrote,
I'm a Believer,
Pleasant Valley Sunday, and I'm a Believer.
That's
right?
Carol Goffin King wrote that, but
Carol Goffin wrote that.
Yeah, he wrote a little bit me, a little bit you.
Well, a little bit me, right? But I'm a Believer, right?
And I'm a Believer, yeah.
Yeah, and but you know what? These guys were decent, really good musicians.
They were, and good songwriters. I mean, Nesmith, you can't.
Nesmith,
yeah.
I think Nesmith, had he, you know, maybe taking it even further, I mean, he could have written, you know, songs for just about any band in America or hits. He could absolutely be a hit maker. Really, really talented.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see him smiling and having fun, at least on this tour, because he obviously kind of pulled away for many years. Yeah, I mean, the Monkees, I mean, you got to love it. So, see, now we went from Bruce to your band, the Monkees, and I forgot.
I was just asking, like, are they
where the passion came from?
Yeah, like, are they your band? Like the guy?
So I'm a Jersey guy. I mean, so, you know, it is a law here that, you know, you either choose Bruce or Bon Jovi. You make a choice
or your parents can choose Frank Sinatra.
Well, and they did.
But nobody chooses John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. That's upsetting.
See, now I have a story about everything. I sometimes think I should write a book. All right, so we're going to digress, and I'll tell you my Cafferty. This is back to DC 101. I'm at DC 101, and I went home for a weekend, and Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, I had seen them play at a couple clubs. Actually, they played at the Stone Pony, and I went up to Cafferty after because he would hang out at the bar. And I said, "Hey, I'm working at this radio station in DC. And you just played this, you know, song Wild Summer Nights, and I would love to play this at the station." I didn't tell him I was an intern or whatever. and he said, "Hang on," and he brought me the single. I go down to the station the next week, and I don't say anything. I just gave it to one of the jocks, Chris Montgomery, I think was the DJ's name. And I said, just don't even look at the label, just play this and tell me what you think. And he would have one of a progressive show where he would do that. He goes, "I haven't looked at the label, folks, but one of our interns, Mitch, who, you know, usually is getting tickets out in the Model T at Tyson's Corner or wherever the hell he is, and they played Wild Summer Nights." And I'm listening, and I'm like, he's like, "I can't believe he handed me Bruce Springsteen's new single Off the River." Blah, 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 blah. And I'm dying. And, you know, obviously there's a resemblance there. But, you know, Cafferty's almost the same age and got his start up in Rhode Island and became a real bar band. And then about 2 years later, I think maybe 3 years when I was living in L.A. is when Eddie and the Cruisers came out. And I could not believe it when went to see that movie and realized the soundtrack was all Beaver Brown. And
Yeah, coming out of Michael Pare's mouth. Yeah.
Exactly. And now there's an event every year called Light of Day Foundation. It's tied to Michael J. Fox. It's a Parkinson's thing, but it started because of a guy that was involved in the ticket world for Bruce for many years, Bob Benjamin and Parkinson's, and they would celebrate his birthday and they'd have this event. And Bruce has played at it. If they've done 25, he's probably shown up 15 times, and I've been at most of them, and including like playing 2.5, 3 hour sets with the backup band, which usually is Joe Grishecki's band, which is a band out of Pittsburgh that's been a big part of this. So, and Cafferty is always plays with that. Steve Forbert, who lives in Jersey now too.
I have a buddy who's a big Bruce Springsteen fan. When I was in radio, I used to always tease him by saying, like, I mean, Bruce Springsteen's okay. He's just a poor man's John Cafferty.
That's a great line. I think Bruce would love that. And even DC 101 at the time. I mean, Bruce was obviously huge. The River had just come out. They were more kick-ass rock and roll, and so I was able to pull off these crazy things. So Bruce had a show in Hampton, Virginia, which was about 2 hours away. And I said, can I cover the show for the station? And they had me call in during intermission because Bruce used to do 2 sets. And I went to the payphone back in 1981 and I called in on the air and talked about that show. And it was an incredible show. It was the second leg of the River Tour. It was the first night he did This Land Is Your Land. And also the first time he had done War on stage, the Edwin Starr song. And fast forward to probably 21 years later, there's another event which Bruce is involved in, the Kristen Ann Carr Foundation. Dave Marsh and his wife Barbara Carr, who's been a producer for all of the tours over the years, put on this private event. And it's a fun little event. I went to a few that were concerts, and then Max Weinberg's New Jersey Devil hockey tickets were near mine. And my son and his son, Jay, who's now a great drummer with a heavy metal band, Slade, I think, something like that.
Slade was
Slayer.
Okay, I was like, Slade is like a
Slayer. So my son's there, and he's out on the ice skating at this event, and he's talking to Brodeur, and Jay comes off, and I'm standing there with Max, and I'm just sort of BSing, and I met Max a number of times, had him speak at our local JCC. He does a lot of stuff like that. He grew up in 2 towns away from here. And my son Harrison says to Max Weinberg, he goes, "My dad wants to meet your boss." He's 8 years old. So Max says, "All right, Mitch, you got $10,000. You can come to this event. You come in the VIP room." Well, this was a very different time in my industry. Let's just put it that way, in the financial services industry, where I used to be an advisor. I'm not anymore. I'm just saying that so for compliance reasons. I told them, hey, there's an opportunity to bring 3 clients and myself to this event to meet Bruce Springsteen. Oh, would you like a limo? Like, okay. And again, this is 2000. So it was a very different time in this industry. This would never happen today.
Yeah.
And of course, the 3 friends I brought were the clients I brought were really, really good friends that I see Bruce with. And that night, Matt, I walk in and we're in this private little room first. And Bruce, I saw him, he was talking with Clarence, and he was off with Steven, I think. And then he comes over to Max, and Max introduces me to him. And then Patty, his wife, is there, a real wise guy. And he goes, "Bruce, this is my friend Mitch." And Patty says, "Bruce, you were hoping to meet Mitch tonight." I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And then Bruce, held court, and then I was able to go over and what did I talk to him about? What do you say to someone that you're, many people call it obsession. I call it a passion. I think my wife downstairs would definitely go on the obsession part. And I said to him, first thing out of my mouth, Hampton Coliseum, 1981. And he said to me, he said, a lot of people talk about that show. He says, it was a great show. And he remembered, he remembered what that he had, first night he did that. He remembered certain things that I knew he wasn't just wasn't blowing smoke up my ass, that it was, he was real about it. And he was great, and every other time that I've met him casually, it's been incredible. But my best Bruce Springsteen story involves my 96-year-old mom when she was 90. Steven's aunt thought it would be cool to have my mom open up a concert for his band, Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, in 2017 at this big theater. And he sends me an email with the script, and I go to my mom, and my siblings would go, "Oh, she'll never do it. She'll never do it." Well, I know my mom. She's going to do this. So we go out to the theater, and this beautiful old theater in Staten Island that I've never been to. I don't think I've ever been to Staten Island other than drive through it.
Yeah, unless you lose a bet.
And exactly, that's about it. That's true. And the rehearsal was hysterical, and she got up and she introduced it, and the place went crazy, and people took pictures and with her selfies, and suddenly this fan ship began of hers, and it led to me getting a call from a talent agency that represented JD, that was doing a print ad campaign where they wanted a bunch of old Jewish women to be yentas to talk about how they were coding in the middle of the night to get the right Jewish girl for their grandchildren.
Like matchmakers. Oh, that's great. That's great.
I brought my mom in. Again, my brother said, she'll never do this. I brought my mom in, actually with my daughter, and it was like a Woody Allen movie. All these old Jewish women walking around reading their script, and you just can't make this up. My mom puts the script down, says, "I'm just going to go in and tell a joke." And she went in and told some silly joke. And she was in the room, I think, 35, 40 minutes, and she got the role of lead Yenta, which meant she got 2,500. The others got 500. And it was a print campaign done by a great photographer, Randall Ford, who's been magazine covers and all kinds of things in Brooklyn. And she was on, subway stops, charging stations, giant billboards on top of in Times Square and Junior's Cheesecake. And suddenly she's a celebrity, and she's getting all these articles and TV stations. And Stevie's like, I made her, called her Queen Bee. She started a Twitter for her, Mama Go 90. And suddenly she's got this like huge following. And some people thought she was Bruce's mom, who's the same age. And then tip it off, when she's 92, Steven is finishing his last tour at the Paramount in Asbury Park. And I knew Bruce was going, but I didn't want to say anything to her. But Maureen, who I'm really close with, Steven's wife, who has a theater company that I'm involved with, she and Steven, called me and said, would B come on stage and dance during this final song, which is Soul Twisting. And we're making a video, a whole thing. I'm like, sure. And I went over, my family's like, she's not going to do it. And she did it, and she got up there. I'm sitting there in the third row. Now, I knew that she might meet Bruce that night, but you never know. And my friend Rich was involved with the show, and I said, don't even tell me, just surprise me. And I'm sitting there, and she comes out with her boa and everything, and I can send you the link and everything if you want to link to this.
Yes, definitely.
Dancing
on stage, and it was incredible. And who comes out to take her off stage and sit down with her but Bruce Springsteen, because he had just played as a surprise at the end of the show, I Don't Want to Go Home, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and It's Been a Long Time with Stevie and the band. And then, the show ends, my mom comes out, people are taking selfies with her, and then she's all excited, and my friend Rich is holding up his phone like, dude, wait till you see this. And, this amazing picture, which I'll send to you, Bruce and my mom was taken, and she's in shock. She had taken her hearing aids out. So she like hardly remembers what the conversation was. She says, I was babbling on about you and this and it was really a sweet moment. And, my worlds have collided in a lot of ways. And
it sounds it.
I was, in some ways I thought I should write, if I ever was going to write a book, it would be called This Close or So Close, because, I worked interned for Howard Stern before he got big. I interned for Charlie Rose before he got big. I worked for Larry King before the CNN show. And then I went to college with Alec Baldwin when he was Alex Baldwin, who could care less about acting, and ran for class president and lost and said, it, and went to New York and got discovered walking in the streets of Soho to be on a soap opera. And obviously the rest is history with him. And, I've seen him a number of times over the years. And
it sounds like you've carved out a pretty good, pretty nice existence for yourself, though.
It does. Yeah.
I'm very blessed that all these things have happened and the worlds collide. But getting back to Peloton, having Bruce, because that is your show. Yeah. I see in front of me the clip out. So we gotta get back. Unless this is going to be a show about haircuts, I take my hat off. We're not doing a show about haircuts. You have lovely hair, Crystal.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
You're the only one here with any.
Exactly. So it was. I've been really, really blessed with all of that, and but combining it all and being able to do these rides, and I'm just so happy that Springsteen's music is on Peloton, and it was way overdue.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
It's hard to wrangle. Like, he's very protective, which I get, and that's why he is where he is, right? Like, he knows the value the value of his work, and there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And my guess is his daughter, Jessica, probably has a Peloton and probably, was in his ear about it.
Yeah.
These are how way these things happen.
For sure. Absolutely.
That's great to think about, though. That's great to think.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah,
I'm sure we could do this all day. I know I could.
Yes. Yes, definitely. So many great stories.
But before we let you go, let everybody know, like, your leaderboard name, where they can find you, where they can find your show, things like that.
Sure, a very clever leaderboard name at MP Slater. I spent many years working on that. I need to change that name, but I'm Mitchell Paul Slater. So, and the reason I did MP Slater is that there's actually, sadly passed away, but there's a rock promoter who's very famous named Mitch Slater who worked with Ron Delsner, who coincidentally, and this is another crazy story, was my bunkmate at Camp Winnetou in the Berkshires in Massachusetts when I was 7 years old. What? And years later, we had two Mitch Slaters in one bunk. We used to get each other's laundry. It was the kind of camp that was a little spoiled the way this camp was set up. It's still out there, Camp Winnetou. And years later, I interviewed the other Mitch on my radio show.
That's funny.
I wanted to talk to him on my podcast, but he'd been ill. But so yes, at MP Slater is my Peloton name. And I appreciate the high fives. I don't do a lot of that. I just get so into making sure I get a good workout, which is important to me, and I just let the music take me away, and I'm singing, but I love it all. I'm singing to Hamilton. I'm singing to, Rent. Oh my God, I love the Rent ride.
Yes.
So it's not just the music, the rock music, and I do like country, and Hannah's introduced me some interesting country artists that I never would have discovered. So shout out to everybody at Peloton and John Foley, and there's a whole other thing there. The story of that company, which I'm sure you've covered, is quite interesting. And Guy Raz, who I had on my podcast, who does one called How I Built This, did a great interview with Foley years ago, and the whole story is quite interesting. And
we teased John Foley about that because he let us interview him, like, I think a few months before he did that interview with Guy Raz, and we were like, he podcast cheated on us.
Yeah, you filthy whore.
Every time I see Resnick on another podcast, I'm like, John, man, I feel abused. And I'm like, and then I realize, oh, wait a minute, you've still had a song that has over 1 billion downloads.
Yeah. Right.
I think you can do whatever you want, man.
For sure.
But yeah, so this has been a lot of fun. So my podcast, Financially Speaking with Mitch Slater, on Apple, on Spotify. You can just Google it. And if you are a Bruce Springsteen fan, go to my YouTube page. Just Google Mitch Slater YouTube, and you'll see incredible videos, especially of this recent tour where I am like right up front. I mean, I've had one video from the last night in New Jersey where there was a young girl in front of me, and it was her 21st birthday, and she had a sign, "Do a drink with me, Bruce. I'm 21." And the girl, Bruce used to bring everyone on stage. He's not doing it this tour. So Bruce sees that, comes over, puts his hand out, wanting the little bottle of tequila that she has. And she jumps on stage. And then Bruce is like, laughing, like, no, get down. No, because this Bruce has done this for years since the Courtney Cox thing.
Yeah.
But this tour, because of COVID protocols, they weren't doing that. And I had the whole thing on video, and her dad, was so happy I got it. And it's had like, I don't know, a life of its own, 7-8 million.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Of a reel. Just hysterical. So yeah, I have a lot of, but I've got great videos of concert footage, especially with Bruce, and some great Goo Goo Doll stuff too. But thank you. This has been really a lot of fun talking with both of you. I love your show. I'm really honored that you reached out to me.
Oh, we're honored that you took the time.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. Thank you.
Sure.
The Clip Out.
So I guess that brings this episode to a close. Until next week, where can people find you?
People can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/CrystalDO'Keefe. They can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and the Peloton leaderboard at ClipOutCrystal.
And you can find me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. You can find the show online, facebook.com/The Clip Out. While you're there, like the page, join the group. Crystal is eager to go. She turned off her ring light. I'm still talking.
I'm going.
We're lucky she's still on the Zoom call. Like that's
we got a movie to go to. Let's go.
We're gonna go see Elemental. I'm seeing 3 movies in 2 days.
Yes.
So it's gonna be pretty crazy. I'm seeing Elemental, I'm seeing Flash, and then I'm seeing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So it's gonna be that's a lot of cool nerd stuff packed into a short period of time.
Sure is.
I'm gonna be tired. So anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep pedaling
and rowing
and running and lifting and
do all
listening
the
to
things.
real spoilers.
You know what? Just work out.
You've been warned. All the taglines.